Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Isn't that right, Zombie Picture Show? Spider spins a web of silk. Bullshit artist spins a web of deception. And the longer the spider's web's there, the bigger the web grows, because the spider figures that nobody notices. The longer the web of deceit is there, the bigger the bullshit artist spins it, because they figure that nobody's noticed. And familiarity breeds contempt. And when the bullshit artist begins their career, they might be really careful about what they say and who they say it to, and they might keep tabs on all their lies. And as the lies appear to be believed, the bullshit artist becomes contemptuous of the people they're lying to. Obvious idiots, believe anything. Becomes a game. I remember it well. I was a teenager. My boarding school dormitory master, a fella called Father Anthony Bolt. Funny bloke, he always used to talk with his eyes shut, as if he had a script on the inside of his eyelids. It was always the same script, and he talked as if he had 3 testicles, very deep voice. In a Zombie Picture Show, I'm going to channel for you what Barry Bolt used to say to me when I was a teenager. Right, the fact that you're 40 means you're a late developer, mate. What Barry used to say was, fellow, you've got a lot of good in you, but you do such silly, silly things. Right? Well, that's you, Zombie Picture Show. You got a lot of good in you, you're a nice bloke and you mean well, but you do some silly fucking things. Right? Really silly. Several weeks ago, you were saying that you had been for 20 years in the US Air Force, and you began your Air Force career as an enlisted man as a data decoder, following which you moved on to being a missile designer. And then you were a drone pilot, and then you were a professor of physics, the chaos professor of physics, or physics professor of chaos. And while you're a physics professor of chaos in the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel, that's when you said you were designing bacterial phages to improve the human genome through your rabbit breeding experiments. Okay? And that's when I left a comment on your thread to the effect that the great Waldo Pepper to Walter Mitty, that is not a career path, that is a WIBNIF. Right? Now, WIBNIF is an acronym. It means wouldn't it be nice if fantasy. Right? And if you had enough common sense to pour sand out of a boot with instructions written in 5 languages on the sole, you would have given up the bullshit. But you didn't, did you? Oh, shit, no. You had to make a clip. Warbles on a lot. You put wasps in my head. Right? So I made you a clip to Zombie Picture Show treatment for head wasps. And I explained the failure of faith in the chain of command. I explained what happens to veterans and veterans' children. Right? I explained that the US Air Force doesn't design any missiles. They buy them from civilians who manufacture them. I explained that drone pilots your age were not ex-missile designers, nor were they data decoders. Drone pilots your age used to fly fighters and transports, and they were involuntarily transferred to the model aeroplane department because nobody wanted to pay them, you know, to sit at $10,000 per hour per engine farting around the sky when they could fly a deadly model via satellite. I didn't bother going into the professor of the physics of chaos designing phages. Couldn't see the point. And what did you do? You put up a clip with yourself on a little thumbnail, 1.5 bees' dicks by 1 bee's dick, flashing illegible pieces of paper at an unreadable distance from the camera lens. Right? And it was clearly obvious you were living in fantasy land and you were really only hurting yourself, right, by pretending to be somebody that you're not. So I left you to it, right? Well, okay, that's where things were 3 weeks ago. But more recently, a fella called Sage Bodhisattva, see, I got his name right for once, he invited anybody to take part in a collaborative video about death, right? And he put it together, 5 clips plus his input, death testimonial, runs an hour and 56 minutes, went up on the web last night. And I was really pleased with it, you know, like it was 3 hours before I turned 51, and I was in my first ever collaborative video, and he gave me the final slot, so I'm the, you know, finishing flavour in the mind of anybody who watches it, which I count as a great honour, and, you know, I'm a narcissist, so my ego likes that. And in the middle of the video, we've got Zombie Picture Show, an atheist, right? And an antinatalist and a bit of an ethicist, funny sort of an ethicist because he's got a daughter, but we got Zombie Picture Show, the antinatalist, ethicist, Air Force professor of physics of chaos, missile designer, drone pilot, designer of bacterial phages, recounting his near-death experience, which he says happens at Bells Beach in Australia. And we get a long description of swimming with a box jellyfish at Bells Beach in Australia, and crawling out onto the sand after being stung by the box jellyfish and going to hospital and losing consciousness from the box jellyfish. And it's all bloody convincing, you know. Can't remember anything about the time when I was clinically dead, says Zombie Picture Show, but he remembers that it was the most beautiful thing that happens to him. And therefore, all atheists can take heart from the point that there's nothing out there. Yeah? That's what you said, isn't it? Well, I got a bit of a problem with that Zombie Picture Show. And herein lies the problem. Now, I'm sorry about the shadows on this, and I'm using an atlas that was printed in 1985. So we're going to come in here, and now you can see this blue line. That's 30 degrees south, right? Now I live on that line on top of the mountains in here, right? This is where I am. When I was a kid, my father had a house at the coast over here, and I used to swim in what we call the Great Eastern Firebreak, right? Because when you get a bushfire in Australia and the westerly wind blows it, that's where you stop it, the Great Eastern Firebreak. There's nowhere else, no other way. So I was never worried about box jellyfish, because I knew you're not going to get a box jellyfish ever at all further south than 25 degrees south. You start to have problems with them here at the Tropic of Capricorn, and that is Rockhampton there, right? This is the Great Barrier Reef, and once you've got this coral reef offshore, you don't get anything much in the way of surf, right? So you don't ever get an 11-foot surf where there's a big chance of a box jellyfish. By the time you get here to 20 degrees south of the equator, yeah, there's lots of box jellyfish, and Bowen, Townsville, Cairns, Cooktown, around there, the surf lifesavers wear a full-length bodysuit made out of nylon pantyhose, and it comes up to their throat. Once you get to Cooktown, and, you know, all the way over here, it's irukandji that are the problem. They're smaller and more deadly than box jellyfish, okay? Now, come down here, Bells Beach, it's either here or it's here. I've never been to Victoria, but I know it's south of Melbourne and it faces Bass Strait. That's why it gets big waves. And there's no possible way that a box jellyfish has ever come 1,500 miles around the coast to do a near-death experience for Zombie Picture Show at Bells Beach. It's just total fucking bullshit. So, unless you think we are as silly as you look, Zombie Picture Show, what you've done is you've outed yourself as a complete drivelling half-wit. And you've made every atheist on the planet look like an idiot when it comes to discussing near-death experience, because that's who you are representing, every atheist on the planet in a discussion about death. Right? You were the only one who stood up and wanted to say anything, and everything you said was bloody bullshit. You should be ashamed of yourself. And I don't want to talk to you until you're ready to apologise big time for all the bullshit that you have floated. Goodbye, Zombie Picture Show.